Hey guys, today we are talking about Doctor Who crossovers. When you're a show as old as Doctor Who, you're bound to find yourself in a fictional universe from time to time.
Alex, can you hear me?
What?
Has this worked?
Who?
Alex, it's me, Phil Hawkins. I'm talking to you from another universe. / another YouTube channel.
That's amazing. How are you doing that?
With this. I made it myself. With a bit of help from my 3-year-old daughter. I call it my crossover machine.
What a fantastic coincidence. I was just going to talk about the times Doctor Who has crossed over with other fictional universes.
What a bizarrely convenient coincidence.
Do you want to help me out with it?
Absolutely. All this and more coming up
today on the Doctor Who Guide. The best box set that you can buy for Doctor Who. Hey guys, welcome back to the Doctor Who Guide, helping you grow your knowledge collection and connection with other Doctor Who fans. If you're new here and that sounds like something that you want to do, then definitely consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell because we have new videos coming out every single Saturday. If you hear thumping throughout this video at any point, it's because there's work going on in the other side of the house. Big shout out and thanks to Phil Hawkins. He's got a wonderful YouTube channel, geeky stuff and a lot of Doctor Who stuff, so I know you guys are going to love what he does. He did a lot of scripting and research for this video, so definitely check out his channel if you like what you see in this video. And he's actually going to tell you about the parameters for what we consider a crossover for the purposes of this video.
Okay, let's first establish what counts, because we're talking about Doctor Who crossing over with other fictional universes. So that means that Doctor Who crossing over with Torchwood doesn't count, Torchwood crossing over with Sarah Jane Adventures or Doctor Who, that doesn't count. That's all within the Whoniverse. We're talking Whoniverse crossing over with other fictional universes. And fictional is the key there. It has to be a fictional universe, not just a TV personality from the real world. But it doesn't have to be the Doctor himself crossing over. It can be the TARDIS, it can be the Daleks, it can be any part of the Whoniverse crossing over to another fictional universe, which, as you may well know, with the rights issues of the Daleks and things like Canon, that can happen much more frequently and without the BBC's involvement at all. So that's what counts. And look, we're human. We may not have caught every single instance that counts. So if you know of some in the topics that come up in these videos that we haven't mentioned, then please do mention them, of course, in the comments below.
Okay, so the first area of crossovers we're talking about today is TV. Now, TV is probably the category where crossovers take the most work because you've got to work with another fictional universe's cast and crew and get those things all situated. Dimensions in Time is a charity crossover event that was made sort of in lieu of a much more complex Doctor Who 30th anniversary special that didn't end up seeing the light of day. But this was done in support of and by Children in Need, which is a huge charity event that happens in the UK. Doctor Who wasn't on currently, wasn't airing. It had ended 4 years prior. So this one, of course, brought back a bunch of Doctors and companions. So Ronnie is trying to stop the Doctor from stopping her evil plan, so she creates this I think it's some sort of device that causes the Doctor to, who was then in his 7th incarnation, to sort of degenerate and go through his other regenerations, and that happens for the companion as well. So you see a whole host of Doctor Who companions making some really cool comebacks. You get to see the Brigadier and the 6th Doctor. Now this special crossed over with the very popular soap opera EastEnders. At certain points, the Doctor and his companions will meet up with characters from this show and be in that location. And the cool part about this was it was sort of interactive. The audience got to call in and vote on which of 2 EastEnders characters would join the Doctor to help save the day. So that would happen in a part 2, and presumably they had 2 versions of the story filmed so that they could air whichever one the audience decided. And the phone vote raised £101,000 for Children in Need, which is insane.
I remember watching this when it was on TV live. I was 7 or 8-ish at the time. I was probably 8. I think I was 8 at the time. I remember going to get the 3D glasses that cost, I think they were like 50 pence from Woolworths or something, the local Woolworths, and the special Children in Need, sitting down with my family, Children in Need, as we did most years anyway, but watching this special Doctor Who episode I had kind of just started getting a little bit into Doctor Who, I think, around that time. I had a couple of VHSs, I had the 5 Doctors, another multi-Doctor story, so I liked multi-Doctor stories, and this fulfilled that. It was quite exciting. Even though I hadn't seen most of Doctor Who, I didn't have a clue who most of the companions were, I still really liked it, and it was fun to see it cross over with one of my mum's favourite soaps, EastEnders. It was fun. It probably doesn't hold up now, though. I haven't seen it since. Now, in Dimensions in Time, which Alex was just talking about, the Doctor met a EastEnders character called Doc Cotton. She is one of the longest serving EastEnders characters. I think she's been in it from the beginning in 1985. And she's still in it today? I don't know, I haven't watched it in a few years. But she was in it in 2011, back when the National Television Awards did a Doctor Who little skit. The National Television Awards is a British television awards ceremony that runs every year and has done since 1995, and most years it is presented by one Dermot O'Leary, the cheeky Essex chap that he is, and apparently he used to go to my sixth form college before I went there. But hey, it's still some kind of claim to fame. People used to talk about it a lot in the halls of the college. Anyway, back in 2011, they did a little skit, as I said, with the Doctor. The skit went as such. Dermot O'Leary wakes up late for the television awards. He needs to get there quickly. What better way than via TARDIS, and the Doctor is on hand to help him out. Doesn't quite go smoothly though, and they end up taking a few detours. Now, normally we're not counting crossovers with real life people from our real world, so just crossing over with Dermot O'Leary in this instance doesn't count. But one of the detours that he does take him to is once again to the EastEnders set, or should I say Albert Square, where, as previously mentioned, he once again meets Doc Cotton. They also hop over to another one of Britain's great institutions of soap operas, Coronation Street, so they get a double soap opera crossover in this one.
Next up is a sitcom from the 80s called Chelmsford 123, which is set in the year 123 AD. And in the beginning of the episode Arrivederci Roma, these two characters, they're pulling a cart along and one of them gets a splinter, and there's funny banter between them, but whilst they're getting the splinter out of this guy's hand, behind them in the distance, a TARDIS appears and a doctor-like person walks out, looks around, and then heads back in the TARDIS. So that's just a really cool, funny scene from that show. Next up is One Born Every Minute.
In 2013, we got another charity comedy sketch, this time for that year's Comic Relief, otherwise known as Red Nose Day. This was a bit of a three-way crossover. You had Doctor Who crossing over with a sort of reality documentary type series, which we're not counting because it's not a fictional universe, called One Born Every Minute, which is a series about people giving birth, crossed over with the drama Call the Midwife. Call the Midwife, if you're not familiar, is a 1950s set BBC TV series all about midwives and nuns, and midwives that work for nuns and midwives that are nuns. But basically it's 1950s and it's all about midwives and how they deal with their job. So this starts off as if it was an episode of One Born Every Minute, the documentary reality series about people who giving birth. And it's got a couple there, they're very stressed, they need midwives there, and who turns up? The 1950s midwives from Call the Midwife. They're there giving all their outdated advice, and it's played a lot for laughs, obviously. It's the comedy sketch after all, and that's very amusing. But the couple aren't particularly happy. They're getting more and more stressed. They buzz the intercom and demand that a doctor turn up. And one does, of course. Matt Smith turns up in his TARDIS. The 11th Doctor arrives to save the day, but he has a dire warning. And that warning is that the couple's twins, Jonathan and Edward, would go on to become the most horrifying creature imaginable. Warning delivered, the Doctor is on his way, but the midwives quickly ask him to pop them back to 1950.
So for the next crossover, I'm going to need a different shirt. Ta-da! The next crossover is called Mind My Minions, and it was this fun little 8-minute video done by BBC One featuring Greg James and 3 minions who were like real-life actors in Minion costumes, and basically Greg James is assigned with like finding the Minions and getting them to the correct show where they're supposed to be featured. And so he basically ends up chasing these Minions. They make appearances in various different newsrooms and places, the Philharmonic studio at one point, but most importantly, the Minions end up running into the TARDIS set, and you get to see them and Greg James in the 12th Doctor's TARDIS. You see them in the 1st Doctor's TARDIS in black and white, and then in the 10th Doctor's TARDIS. So it's quite a fun little short. So that's the Mind My Minions crossover.
Now, let's move on from TV shows and onto a completely different medium, that of books. And we're going to start with this one, Doctor Who Coming of the Terror Files by Michael Moorcock. This was released in 2010, and it was the first of a new range of BBC Doctor Who books. Premium, hardback, long novels by authors that were well known for their original fiction. This was the first of them, and it's weird. Basically, it's very weird. I hadn't read any Michael Moorcock before reading this book, and honestly I haven't read any since because I didn't really get on with this that well. It's quite a confusing read, but basically Michael Moorcock has his own series of books called the Second Ether series, and in this novel he crosses over the Doctor with those. In this novel, the Doctor is saving the multiverse, and as part of that he's traversing the multiverse and happens to end up in this universe, which seems to be the Second Ether universe. It shares several characters with Michael Moorcock's own series and various concepts as well. For instance, Moorcock in this book specifically identifies the Doctor as the avatar of, I'm going to have to check this, Eternal Champion, which I think is a concept from one of his books. My take on this is that it's a very confusing read, and the Doctor doesn't even really come into it. Him and Amy don't really come into it until quite a way through the novel. They were almost like secondary characters. It's almost like Michael Moorcock is writing a Second Ether book and the Doctor and Amy just happen to show up. I mean, that's fine. And you know what? It's been 8 years since I read it. I read it when it came out. I might give it another go.
So the next book crossover is a BBC Past Doctor Adventures book called Corpse Marker, and it actually is a sequel to The Robots of Death, which is one of my all-time favorite 4th Doctor stories. And in this book, a side character is called, I need to look at my notes, Carnell. He is a psychostrategist. His character actually appeared in the show Blake 7, and this was set 2 years after his time on Blake 7. So this is a very cool crossover between the two shows in book form, which is a lot of fun.
Another one of the Virgin New Adventures series that crossed over with another fictional universe was this one, All-Consuming Fire, in which the Doctor meets the greatest detective himself, Sherlock Holmes, and his friend Watson. Kind of. Sherlock and Watson are actually aliases that this detective duo that the Doctor works with in this story are using, but they are aliases they've come up with. At this point, the fictional Sherlock and Watson do not exist, but it is implied that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle himself got his idea from this adventure, because at one point Benny is reading a Sherlock Holmes book in the TARDIS and says that's not how it happened. So how does the so-called Sherlock Holmes end up working with the Doctor? Well, in 1887 a secret library gets burgled, and the last one to read the books was apparently the Doctor. Haven't actually read this one yet, despite owning a copy for, I don't know, about 10 years, so probably should get around to it at some point, but I have a lot of Doctor Who books I haven't read, so... Oh hey, they've got illustrations! I did not know the Virgin New Adventures had illustrations. Shows how much I flick through the books that I actually own. Flick through the books that I own.
How much I flick through the books that I actually own.
Phil, you're breaking up.
Something's wrong with the machine. Hold tight, Alex. I'll try and get it fixed.
Well, shoot. We hadn't even covered audios, movies, and comics yet. You know what? I bet he'll get it fixed, though. In fact, if you head over to his channel, I'm pretty sure he's got everything in order. So if you want to see part 2, you can click or tap the video that's on the screen right now. And if you want to subscribe to either of our channels, you can click or tap these little circle icons right here. Thank you so much for watching, and definitely check out Phil's channel because we had a lot of fun.